Truck Talk, brought to you by eTruckBiz.
Hi everyone, Ben Wheel welcoming you and reminding you that this episode of Truck Talk is not endorsed, sponsored, approved, or otherwise affiliated with fedexground or any company other than eTruckBiz. Joining us today are Larry Ham, a fedexground contractor and customer of eTruckBiz, Daryl Cleveland, a potential buyer of a fedexground business, and Seneca Bowers, a finance manager at eTruckBiz. Today's episode is about spinoff reports, and you may be asking yourself, what's a spinoff and why would someone need a report? Which is exactly why we've created this podcast episode. Our guests will be answering those questions and more today. So, without further delay, I'll welcome our guests to today's podcast. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's start with Larry. So tell our listeners a little bit about your background in this business, maybe how long you've been around in this business, how many trucks you have, a little more about your location.
Okay, yeah, I'll be more than happy to do that. I started this business back in 2000 just as a home delivery driver contractor, and then throughout the years I've grown it to where I now have 49 trucks, and I'm in 2 different stations, and I have a pretty large operation in the Louisville terminal. This company, working with FedEx and contracting with FedEx, has been very lucrative to me and my family, and it has provided my family and myself a very nice lifestyle.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Daryl, let me ask you the same question, but obviously you're looking to get into this business. You can't talk about your experience in this, but tell us about your background and what interests you in becoming a fedexground contractor.
I have over 21 years of global logistics experience, and that's basically stemmed from 8 years of active duty officer time for the U.S. Army, and I spent another 10 years working as a government contracted civilian with different companies overseas in support of the mission during OIF and OEF. And like the last couple of years, I've worked outside as a civilian with one company in particular as an operations manager. My thoughts and ideas of being a leader and wanting to, become my own boss, also my way of trying to give back to others, was to establish myself as an entrepreneur. And that's basically the avenue I've taken. And I felt with FedEx, which is right in my wheelhouse as a logistician, professional logistician, it basically just clicked, this is what I can do. I think I can do this effectively, and I can do this well enough to, as Mr. Larry pointed out, provide for my family and then for future generations, if that so happens to be.
Good reasons to get in this business. And finally, Seneca, tell our listeners a little bit about your background in this business.
I have an accounting background, also a former business owner myself, and have sold that business, so I have a little bit of experience with selling businesses firsthand. All
right. And tell us about your background with spinoffs and how many spinoff reports you've created.
Certainly. I prepare the spinoff reports. I work with the sellers. And at this point, I've created hundreds of them already. We've had quite a bit of interest in them recently. With FedEx decreasing their daily stop max, there seems to be quite the demand.
Okay. And tell our listeners, because we said at the beginning we would talk about definitions, what is the definition of a spinoff report?
A spinoff report takes a spinoff. So a spinoff is a portion of a contracted service area, or CSA, typically divided by zip codes. So if someone needed to reduce the volume of their CSA, they would spin off part of that by zip code.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's a portion of the CSA.
Correct. And it can be one zip code or several zip codes.
So it could be one or several. Makes sense to me, and I'm sure to our listeners too. Another term that I know that I've heard you and the team talk about is a P&L. And so tell our listeners, in case they aren't familiar with the term, many may be familiar with it, but what is a P&L and why is it important?
A P&L stands for profit and loss statement, also called an income statement. And what it is a financial statement that shows a business's revenue and their expenses during a particular period. So we would typically look at an entire year. So for 2020, we would look at the revenue that was brought in and the expenses that were incurred to generate that revenue. Example, fuel, wages. So we look at all those expenses, and the end result should be profit. And we also call that owner's benefit.
Okay, so there's an owner's benefit on the P&L. So how would a spinoff report, so the owner's benefit is like a business valuation, I guess, and how, or maybe it's not the same thing, but if someone wanted their business valued, how does a spinoff report differ from just a typical business valuation?
So we're approaching the spinoff value as a market value range. So it's not a true business valuation or business appraisal, but what we're trying to get is the market value that somebody would pay for this area, which is really what it's all about, right? When we want to sell, we want to make sure that someone feels that that's a good price and will pay for it. So when we do that, we're looking at a market value, but we're also showing operational data about that area. So we're doing a financial side, but we're also showing productivity and what that area consists of as far as e-commerce and smart post. So you're getting a lot of other data along with that value.
Okay. Well, thank you. That is good information for people to know as a foundation for this discussion. And also, the last thing I'll just mention is SBA lenders, just in case someone doesn't know. It means Small Business Association. And a lot of times these businesses qualify for loans based on the federal government Small Business Administration program. Is that accurate? Can you confirm that? Seneca, did I say that accurately?
So, yeah, the SBA doesn't lend directly, but they work with lenders to make it easier for smaller businesses to access capital.
Excellent. Okay. So not only do the reason I brought that up is because not only do the buyers and sellers in a transaction look at these spinoff reports, but the lenders do as well. Is that accurate? Or the people the lenders who would use the SBA forms to get loans approved?
Yes, absolutely. Because most companies would have their P&L or income statement based on their entire CSA. Our spinoff analysis enables them to get that down to that spinoff portion, and it represents it accurately enough that the lender feels comfortable.
So, Seneca, why are spinoffs a thing now in 2021?
Yeah, with FedEx decreasing their daily stop max, and in addition, they're looking at reducing the scale for some of these larger contractors as the percentage of a terminal. So with these changes by FedEx, contractors are finding they need to spin off parts of their CSA to satisfy these new requirements by FedEx.
Makes sense. Okay, well, thank you for answering those. Let me ask you one last question, then I'm going to get back to Larry. What information would a seller need to provide to you and your team in order to receive a spinoff report?
The first thing we need is a seller to reach out to their terminal and get the zip codes that would be approved for a spinoff. This step is important because FedEx will need to approve that spinoff before it can be sold. So we would need the zip codes that they're wishing to spin off, and then simply they can go to our website and pay for the spinoff report, and that will initiate a questionnaire with some information about their business, and then we would request their profit and loss statements, and then one of our network associates would get in touch with them to see whatever else that was needed and then to go over the process in more detail.
Thank you for providing all that. So, Larry, let me go back over to you. Tell our listeners your perspective as a seller about the value of a spinoff report and why someone, if they were listening to this and they're a contractor and they're reaching their maximum size and they feel like they're in the terminal, they need to spin off some of their zip codes. What's the value of that report that they could purchase?
Well, that is a very good question, and the answer to that, these reports are invaluable. They're probably one of the most important parts of selling a partial part of a business. These reports not only break down the actual revenue for the area for me, that those zip codes that you were talking about earlier, it breaks down the revenue that those zip codes generate, and then the report goes on using that revenue, and it creates the expenses for that revenue. Then at the bottom of the report, it actually gives you what your owner's benefit is. So, and the owner's benefit is the basic profit and loss. You'll know exactly where you're at, and there might be a plus or minus 1 or 2% maybe in these numbers, but you're going to have the most accurate big picture of your company for that part of it. And then also on these reports, it's going to give you what percentage of your company that those zip codes represent that are actually being spun off, so that when you do your income taxes, you know you're going to do 100% of your income taxes and 100% of your revenue for the company. But these reports, like one of my reports says 36%. So it's 36% of my company is where they're generating these numbers from. And then that is what would go to the the buyer, and the buyer would then have accurate data in which to base his opinion on whether it was worth it or not.
I would imagine also that you are trying to maximize the amount of money that you're asking for this spinoff. Is that correct?
It does. It gives you a value range. It gives you a least valuable range, and it gives you a high valuable range. And anywhere in between that range would be a good selling price. So then the buyer can take their knowledge and they can apply their formulas to these numbers and come out with their own synopsis, if you will, of the actual value or what they're willing to pay for something like this.
Okay, so it gives you a range of what you should be able to expect. So, Daryl, let me ask you a similar question. If someone was listening to this as a buyer, what would you say would be the value of a spinoff report in terms of from the buyer's perspective?
Well, from a entry-level buyer's perspective, I would say this would be the most advantageous way to actually get into FedEx, because they are trending to go small. It's not meaning that you have to stay small, but you will have to form different corporations down the line. But just to be able to get into the door, this is very accessible this way. And also it allows you to focus on a smaller piece of the big picture. So if you come in and you have a 15 truck operation, it may be a little more advantageous to start with a 8 to 10 truck, where you have to become more familiar with the daily operations, even though you're the AO. So you get a sense of knowledge. I'm not just sitting back watching everything happen, because the most important thing that you have to realize is this is your money. This is your shot that you're saying that you want to take. So you have to capitalize on that the best way you can. And with the spinoff, you don't take on the whole piece of the pie. It may be a third, it may be a quarter. If you're fortunate, maybe it's a half. But it allows you to become acclimated to the world of FedEx, because it's ever evolving. From what I'm seeing now, being a part of this process for a little bit over 2 years now, becoming a little more acclimated to the world of FedEx.
So as far as the actual report goes, I'm guessing that you would find that it gives you a better idea than just if a seller on their own were to say, here's my expenses, here's the revenues. This is actually something that's generated by a third party like eTruckBiz that says, we, in our best efforts, this is what we've seen in a somewhat unbiased way. Is that an accurate way of saying that?
You could look at it that way. As a buyer, you're always looking for the best value and knowing with confidence you made the most cost-effective acquisition. So that's the most important thing that you want to take away from the actual spinoff report, and it has that valuable information on there. You could take it a step further once you actually receive the information and the financials. You can have it looked over by your financial advisor as well, so you can have a more warm and fuzzy, a good feeling about what you're actually looking at. The model that the eTruck Biz provides for you, it has that information, and it also gives you the analytics behind what's supporting the financial driving number. You can make a decision with confidence, more or less, saying, okay, hey, I feel okay with what I'm looking to pay for this operation.
That's good perspective. Do you have any other piece of advice for someone who is thinking about buying? You said you've been doing this for a couple of years now. What would be the number one piece of advice that you would give to someone looking to buy into this business?
Well, it's with anything in life. If something is important to you, you dedicate that time and effort to it. Like I said in my introduction, the next phase of my life, I would like to give back and own something and then help others. So that's important to me at this point. I've served my country. I served my country as a civilian, and now I'm looking to serve my community as a provider. And that's just my mindset. So whatever goal may be, and to become a contract service provider with FedEx, don't give up on it and stay vigilant in what you're doing, because not everyone is going to be as welcoming or as friendly as an eTruck Biz. Just stay focused and keep your eyes up.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words, and also thank you for your service to our country. Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Larry, if a owner is listening to this, an owner of one of these businesses, and they're thinking about a spinoff report, is there one top piece of advice you would have for them regarding these spinoff reports?
Like Daryl said, they are moving towards smaller companies right now. And the reason that they're moving towards smaller companies is so that when you come on the onboarding, you're going to be learning so much information all at one time. And the smaller you are, the more successful you're going to be in the long run. The growth will come, just as Daryl stated. The report itself is virtually a Bible, if you will, to follow a plan. And the report itself is a very valuable report because it actually tells you the value of the area, again, that you're doing, and then you can calculate any profits and losses and taxes and things of that nature that you're going to incur as a result of the sale. So this report is one of the best products that eTruck puts out. They put out a lot of really good products, but this one is especially good and has some very intelligent individuals behind us, and they actually go into my settlements. They'll look at my settlements. They know what kind of revenue I have. They know where it comes from. They know what zip code it comes from. They know what driver it comes from. They know how much money. It's drilled down all the way down to how much money you make per stop, and it goes into other aspects of how to increase this owner's benefit by using a power of one. I'm not going to get into all that kind of stuff right now, but it's just all part of what eTruck does. Any new owner should have this spinoff report, and anybody selling, any FedEx contractor who is currently thinking about selling, should absolutely have this report due to the fact that you have no idea what your business is worth until you get this.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Larry. Appreciate you saying that. So, Seneca, let me ask you, if a potential seller is listening and they're interested in what next steps to take for requesting a spinoff report, what would that process be?
So they can find all the information on our website, and that's etruckaec.com. And the initial thing, as mentioned, is we'll need their zip codes, and then they'll purchase the report and provide their profit and loss. Those three things really are the start. It's pretty easy. And then from there, we would discuss the market value range, and they can decide if they would like to list with us.
Sounds simple enough. I appreciate your time to our guests today, to all three of you, and I'll just wrap this up with a question for each of you. So, Larry, let's start with you again. What do you see as the future of FedEx Ground contracting regarding spinoffs? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's a passing fad? Do you think it's something that's going to be around for a while? What do you see for the immediate future of spinoffs as sellers and owners of these businesses?
Well, I think it's going to be, not only is it immediate and ongoing right now, but the future, because of the growth rate that our industry is having right now, the small package industry is having, the growth rate, you're going to get to a point, even starting small like this, that you're going to be wanting to sell off part of your business to extract some profit, if you will, and still own the other half of it, if you will. These reports allow you to do that. So it's all part of the big picture of reaching your financial goals as a FedEx contractor.
Thank you. Daryl, I'll ask the same of you, but from a buyer's perspective, do you think this is something that you're seeing with the people that you're working with on trying to buy some of these businesses, that spinoffs will be more common than purchasing a whole area?
A newbie, I would just remain fluid and see the direction that it takes us, because the models change so many different times, because FedEx is trying to stay competitive. That's just in my opinion. This world we call e-commerce is going to continue to grow. So we have to stay vigilant as contract service providers to say, how are we going to manage this growth? And FedEx believes right now allowing a smaller footprint is going to allow other people to grasp the concept of what we're trying to do, and also allow more change to come if it needs to be. Like I said, just flexibility, more or less. So, just remain fluid and flexible and see what's coming down the line, because it's changed. The model's changed several times from my understanding. And this here is just the way to the future. We're making it as it goes every day in e-commerce. So
thank you for that insight. And finally, Seneca, I know you're not a buyer or a seller, but you've done hundreds of these spinoff reports and helped thousands of contractors in your experience. What do you see for the future of FedEx contracting regarding CSAs, spinoffs, and all that's associated with them?
Well, I think Larry and Daryl hit the nail on the head as far as the growth factor. So even if we spun off all the larger companies and everybody was down to scale, then those segments are now going to grow. And with the model changing, also as Daryl mentioned, I think that the spinoff is going to be here for a while, at least until the next change, for sure.
Very helpful to our listeners, I'm sure, for all three of your perspectives. And I know you have busy days, and this is a work day, so I won't keep you. And I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your days to join us. And hopefully you will join us on future episodes of Truck Talk. Thank you all for being with us today.
thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
You're welcome. And to our listeners, please join us for the next episode of Truck Talk by eTruckBiz.